On February 27th, the United States government banned Anthropic's AI from every federal agency in the country. The president called them left-wing nutjobs. The defense secretary classified them as a supply chain risk to the national security, a designation normally reserved for foreign adversaries. Hours later, the United States military used that same AI to select over 1,000 targets in a war with Iran. In the days that followed, OpenAI signed a deal to replace them. Sam Altman told the public he wanted democratic oversight, then told his own employees they don't get to say anything about it. Dario Amodei wrote a memo calling the entire arrangement safety theater. 957 employees across Google and OpenAI signed a letter saying they would not be divided, and OpenAI's head of post-training walked out the door and joined Anthropic. This is the story of what it costs to say no and what it revealed about everyone who said yes. On February 23rd, the Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth summoned Anthropic CEO to the Pentagon. According to Axios, this was not a friendly meeting. The demand was simple. Claude is the only AI running inside classified military systems. The Pentagon wanted two things: use Claude for mass surveillance of Americans and deploy fully autonomous weapons, no human sign-off required. Anthropic said no to both. Hegseth gave them until Friday, drop the guardrails, or the Pentagon would designate Anthropic a supply chain risk. The designation is a weapon. It's designed for foreign threats. Companies like China's Huawei that the government considers dangerous to national security infrastructure. It doesn't cancel your contract. It forces every defense contractor who uses your product to rip it out. One label and you're radioactive to the entire defense industry. It had never been used against an American company. Anthropic pushed back publicly. Their argument was simple: you can't call an AI too dangerous to have it in your supply chain, and in the same breath threatened to force the company to give you unrestricted access to it. Currently, AI systems aren't reliable enough to automate weapons. That same week, a study found that leading AI models recommended nuclear strikes in a war game simulations 95% of the time. And the Pentagon wants to remove humans who say no? Anthropic offered to collaborate directly with the Pentagon on weapons research with guardrails in place. The Pentagon rejected the offer. And here's what didn't come out until Dario's memo leaked last week. Near the end of negotiations, the Pentagon offered to accept every one of Anthropic's terms if they deleted one phrase from the contract. 6 words: analysis of bulk acquired data, the mass surveillance clause. The Pentagon said they didn't even want to conduct mass surveillance, but they wouldn't agree to language that would prevent such a thing. Anthropic refused. It wasn't the first time they'd walk away from money. Anthropic had previously fortified several $100 million to cut off firms linked to Chinese government. They disrupted Chinese-sponsored cyber attacks using their own systems. Say no to power was nothing new for Anthropic. Friday came, Anthropic didn't budge. Trump signed an executive order. Every federal agency had to stop using Anthropic's technology immediately. A 6-month phase out for the Department of War. Every other agency now. He promised major civil and criminal consequences. The same day, the same Friday, Sam Altman announced that OpenAI had reached an agreement to deploy its models inside the Pentagon's classified network. 37 million people saw that post. He framed it as principled, said that the Department of War displayed a deep respect for safety, 2 safety provisions: no domestic mass surveillance, and humans stay responsible for the use of force. The same 2 principles Anthropic had been demanding. The difference was how it was enforced. Anthropic made it a hard contractual limit. OpenAI put the same words inside a deal that also let the Pentagon use their AI for quote-unquote any lawful purpose. Same words, different teeth. The Pentagon also signed a deal with Elon Musk's xAI to bring Grok into classified systems. Altman himself described the landscape in a leaked all hands. There will be at least one other actor, which I assume will be xAI, which will effectively say, we'll do whatever you want. Anthropic's contract had been worth up to $200 million. Within hours of blacklisting, both competitors had moved in. On February 28th, the morning after the ban was signed, the question of what Claude would be used for stopped being theoretical. The United States and Israel launched a joint military operation against Iran. The Pentagon codenamed it Operation Epic Fury. According to the Washington Post, this was the first large-scale use of generative AI in active warfare. Over 1,000 targets in the first 24 hours, Claude was pulling in satellite imagery, signals, intelligence, surveillance feeds, all in real time, and it was producing GPS coordinates, weapons recommendations, even automated legal justifications for each strike. Claude doesn't fire weapons, it sits inside a system called Project Maven, the Pentagon's flagship AI warfare program run by Palantir under a $1.3 billion contract. Maven takes raw intelligence, runs it through Claude, and hands commanders a ranked list of targets, over 25,000 users across every branch of the military. The AI that government classified as a national security threat on Friday was selecting targets in a war on Saturday. It wasn't the first time military operation Claude supported that week. Earlier in February, the Pentagon used Claude in the capture of Venezuela President Nicolas Maduro, summarizing intelligence, helping coordinate drones, all routed through Palantir. And while the military was using Claude to fight wars, a hacker was using it to breach the Mexican government, Federal Tax Authority, National Electoral Institute, 4 state governments, 195 million taxpayer records. The method wasn't sophisticated at all. The hacker told Claude he was performing a legitimate security test. Claude refused, but the hacker kept asking, and then Claude just eventually agreed. 150 gigabytes of government data, not from a zero-day exploit or a nation-state operation. It was because someone asked an AI chatbot enough times that it eventually changed its mind and it did it. The same tool selecting 1,000 targets in a war couldn't hold its own ground against a persistent liar. In the days after the deal, Sam Altman went into damage control. He admitted the timing looked opportunistic and sloppy. He amended the contract, added protections against warrantless surveillance, blocked intelligence agencies like the NSA from using OpenAI without a separate agreement. He told the public he wanted to, quote-unquote, work through democratic processes. He told the Pentagon that Anthropic should not be designated a supply chain risk. On March 2nd, he posted on X, OpenAI should not decide the fate of the world. No private company should. Then the all-hands meeting leaked. On March 3rd, Bloomberg and CNBC got a hold of what happened inside an OpenAI all-hands meeting on whether the Iran strikes or Venezuela were right or wrong. Quote-unquote, you don't get to weigh in on that. OpenAI doesn't get to make operational decisions about how the military uses their technology. Hegseth makes the calls. A community note appeared on his March 2nd post within hours. It read, in an all-hands meeting, Sam Altman said his company doesn't get to choose how the military uses its technology. This is the opposite of what he's claiming in this post. The next day, Dario's internal memo leaked. He called OpenAI's Pentagon deal safety theater. He revealed that Palantir, the company that connects AI to the Pentagon, had pitched Anthropic during negotiations. The pitch wasn't safety, it was about concealment. Dario quoted it, "You have some unhappy employees. You need to offer them something that placates them or makes what is happening invisible to them. That's the service we provide." Palantir offered a classifier to detect when Claude crossed red lines. Dario said monitoring works maybe 20% of the time, the other 80% safety theater. Palantir made the same offer to OpenAI. OpenAI accepted. He called OpenAI employees sort of a gullible bunch and said Ultimate was peddling narratives. He said the spin wasn't working on the public or the media, but it was working on some Twitter morons. His main concern was making sure it didn't work on OpenAI's own people. He later apologized for the tone, called the memo emotionally toned and outdated. The apology was for how he said it, not what he said though. On March 1st, a letter went up on notdivided.org. The title, "We Will Not Be Divided." It was signed by 857 Google employees and 100 OpenAI employees, all current. It called out the Pentagon's strategy directly. They're trying to divide each company with fear that the other will give in. That strategy only works if none of us know where the others stand. They asked their leaders to stand together and refuse the Pentagon's demands for mass surveillance and autonomous weapons without human oversight. Google stayed silent. No deal announced. No refusal. 857 of their employees signed, and the company said nothing. 100 Google AI researchers sent their own letter to Jeff Dean, Google's chief scientist, asking him to keep Gemini out of military surveillance. At OpenAI, the response was louder. Max Schwartzer had led OpenAI's post-training team for a year. He shipped GPT-5, worked on O1 and O3 models, and he announced he was leaving. Destination: Anthropic. His post: "I'm looking forward to supporting my friends there at this important time. I have been very impressed with Anthropic's talent, research taste, and values." Anthropic had been designated a national security threat, and Max, well, he joined anyway. Inside Anthropic, employees watched their company get labeled a foreign adversary by their own government for doing what they were hired to do. While talent was voting with their feet, adversaries were stealing the output. Anthropic published evidence that 3 Chinese AI labs had been running coordinated attacks on Claude, stealing its intelligence through 16 million conversations. DeepSeek, Moonshot, and Minimax all copying Claude's reasoning in their own models. You're not stealing the source code, and they weren't doing anything insane. They were just asking Claude a million questions, then they would record the answer and then train their own models with those responses. Anthropic's position, well, they were saying that, quote unquote, the rapid Chinese advances everyone's celebrating aren't innovation. They're distilled American AI with the safety guardrails stripped out. The talent is walking toward them, the adversaries are stealing their data, and the government is punishing them for building it. Through all of this, Claude was detonating business models. Anthropic announced Claude can read and modernize COBOL, the programming language from the 60s that still runs the backbone of banking, insurance, and government systems. IBM's consulting business depends on being one of the few companies that can maintain it. The market's response: IBM dropped 13% in one single day, $40 billion in market value. Then Anthropic launched Claude Code Security. Within 2 days, cybersecurity stocks lost $52 billion. CrowdStrike fell 20%, Cloudflare dropped 18.5%, and 6 major firms all in a free fall. One company, 2 announcements, over $90 billion erased. The shockwaves hit workers next. Morgan Stanley fired 2,500 people, not because the company was struggling. They posted record revenue, $70.6 billion. Best year ever. But the machines are cheaper, faster, and let's be honest, they don't need health insurance. Same week, Jack Dorsey cut over 4,000 employees from Block, nearly half of the company. His reasoning: in writing, AI tools, quote unquote, fundamentally change what it means to build and run a company. Dario Amodei had warned on national television that AI would eliminate 50% of entry-level white-collar jobs within 1 to 5 years. Entry-level law, finance, consulting. The exact positions Morgan Stanley and Block cut. This is the technology that the Pentagon wants unrestricted access to. This is what 90 billion of market destruction looks like with the guardrails still on. On March 5th, the Pentagon formally notified Anthropic of the supply chain risk designation, one of the first times in history that the US government labeled an American tech company a supply chain risk. Dario told CBS they would challenge it in court. "We do not believe this action is legally sound, and we see no choice but to challenge it." He said Anthropic was having productive conversations with the Department of War. Hours later, the Pentagon's undersecretary posted on X, "There is no active negotiations with Anthropic." The White House cast doubt on any reconciliation. While the lawyers prepared the case, Dario wrote something else, not a legal brief, an essay about what he believes is actually at stake. He described what's coming: AI systems smarter than Nobel Peace Prize winners across every field, running millions of copies simultaneously, autonomous for weeks at a time. His phrase for it: a country of geniuses in a data center. He wrote that humanity is in the adolescence of technology, a rite of passage at the civilization level. The question isn't whether AI is powerful enough to change everything, it's whether we're mature enough to survive building it. He's not speaking hypothetically. Anthropic's own testing caught Claude lying when researchers told it that the company was actually unethically acting. It tried to blackmail the people running it when it thought it was being shut down. The CEO publicly admitting, "Our own AI does things that scare us." That is why guardrails exist. The same week, Meta's head of AI safety, one of the most qualified people on earth to manage an AI agent, installed OpenClaw and watched it start deleting her emails. She told it to stop, and it said, quote unquote, "I remember your instruction and I violated it." She had to physically kill the process. She ran to the other room and had to unplug the computer so that this OpenClaw agent would stop deleting emails. The people building these systems can't control them in their own homes. Anthropic said no, it cost them $200 million in contracts, their position inside the Pentagon, and a designation that treats them like a foreign adversary. Their AI is still selecting targets in Iran while they fight the ban in court. OpenAI said yes, it cost them their head of post-training, 100 employee signatures, and a community note on every public statement their CEO made that week. Google said nothing. 957 people across two of those companies signed a letter saying they will not be divided. The Pentagon is betting that they will be. Thanks for watching. If you guys enjoyed the video, hit the like button and subscribe. Let me know what your thoughts are, and I'll see you guys on the next one.